I am live. I'm doing this on my laptop again, not on my phone, so that the battery doesn't run out. It just takes a little longer to set up. I am reading The Laird and the Lady. It started in a romantic French chateau where the lad meets the lady. She's an American millionaires. Uh, she traveled incognito to escape from fortune hunters. Anyhow, those two, the lad, Rowan, and the lady, Marylda, got together and they are on a journey to Paris and got married. Page at 51, Wedding Breakfast, Chapter 13. The wedding breakfast was held in a private room at La Perouse. The only other guest and second witness was Malcolm Cairdry, the kinsman who had been entrusted with the somewhat complicated formalities which are necessary before citizens of two different countries can be married in a third. Duncan had arrived with the Elvis the night before, seeming not at all put out by Rowan's casual acceptance of the trouble he had taken to change his plans twice in the course of a few days with no more reason given than a telegram. Marylda had liked him on sight, and after the three of them had dined together, he had told her that she could count on him to help Rowan slay any dragons who threatened to breathe fire on their romance. She gathered that this was a roundabout way of assuring her that in a probable battle with Georgina, she could count on his support. The toast to the bride and bridegroom was drunk in Glenlivet, of which a bottle had been summarily commandeered by Malcolm from a fellow Scot at the embassy. Glenlivet. Luckily, the fellow had the decency to realize nothing except real whiskey was worthy of the occasion, he explained, and white heather was easy enough, though the kind that can be bought in pots is a poor substitute for the proper thing. Rowan and the company of his kin seemed to gain in stature. It was not that he spoke differently, but he assumed authority natural to one who believed unquestioningly in the power of leadership conferred by blood. She was happy to see him so even-tempered, for only this morning he had been annoyed because she had insisted that their marriage was kept secret until they returned to Scotland. It will be much easier if your grandmother doesn't know about me until we are nearly home. Old people always worry. It would be cruel to give her time to think too much about what I'm like. Please, darling, please let us have a real secret, romantic elopement. How could she risk the trustees being seeing a paragraph in the papers which would have caused a deluge of cables? There was always a chance that the identity of Marylda Lovell was not so secure as she believed. If there was a photograph of her, a reporter might recognize it. American here as Mary's Highland chief, tartan for Blackensops, super sausages. Darling Rowan, we mustn't risk being in the French papers. Honorine might see it, or Dr. Chivin. I couldn't bear them to know we've deceived them. I hadn't thought of that, Rowan had admitted, his frown clearing. Now he could avoid writing to Georgina. No use pretending he had not been dreading breaking the news to her. He was no good at writing letters. Much better wait until she saw Marylda and realized that what nonsense it would be to look on her as another American bride who was going to bring disaster to Cloud. Hector had picked a loser, and no one could really blame Georgina for hating her husband's first wife, but Marylda mustn't be allowed to suffer for an ancient jealousy. He had stopped staring out of the window and taken Marylda in his arms. Of course, we won't spoil our elopement. Damn all interfering relatives. I will carve up anyone who dares to snoop. Bring me my claymore, so that I may spill the rat brains of reporters. He had peered under the bed and into the cupboards, then crept up to his sponge, which, he affirmed in a whisper, concealed a very small cameraman. Got him! He had shouted, swatting a fly. He balanced the corpse on a piece of soap and addressed it sternly. Summary justice, I admit, but not excessive. You were going to publish a picture of us in the bath. Laird takes tap end while lady bathes with him before wedding. He turned to Marylda in mock dismay. Is there nothing at which these types will boggle? Nothing, said Marylda. So she had won the first round against the pigs. She was married to Rowan, and somehow she was going to make him so happy that he would go on trusting in love, even when she had to tell him she had lied. Champagne followed the Glenlivet, Courton the champagne. She learned that Courton was the champagne. She learned that the Scottish head is not overrated, for no one showed any signs of having absorbed a considerable quantity of liquor. True to convention, Malcolm had ordered a suite for her. Marylda realized it would have been an error to say that she would have also preferred the Brie. Though, I say, it is as ordered it. Although I say it as ordered it, observed Malcolm, it has been an admirable lunch. Of course, there should have been haggis, but Rowan didn't give me time to have one flown out. I tried to explain to the chef how to make it, but he didn't take kindly to the idea. First get a sheep's pluck, I said, with oatmeal and assorted innards. He must have confused haggis with black pudding, for he shouted, I will not serve pig's blood. The stem of Marylda's wineglass snapped, and a red stream ran across the white cloth and fell in heavy drops to the floor. Oh, I'm so sorry, she said breathlessly. Please forgive me. I don't know how it happened. Duncan saw how white she turned. Surely Rowan doesn't bully her. He sprang to the rescue with his napkin. Darling, it doesn't matter, said Rowan, hoping he did not show he was annoyed that she should be agitated by so trivial an accident. Malcolm, slower to react, but always the diplomat, said heartily, Nothing luckier than breaking a glass. Old Polish and Russian custom. Always provide cheap glasses when we entertain their people. The tension was still acute, so he decided that a more dramatic gesture was required. To the Lady of Cloud, he said, and threw his glass over his shoulder. Duncan, because he could think of nothing else with which to break the sudden silence, passed a large bundle of mill notes across the table to Rowan. Tell me if you want more, he said, embarrassed that he had made the transaction in public instead of in the decent privacy of the lavatory. In spite of Duncan's protest that there was no hurry, Rowan took out his checkbook and borrowed a fountain pen from Malcolm. Marylda made another mental note. One is not indebted, even to one's kin. Marylda wants to sell her car, said Rowan over his shoulder to Malcolm. No good to us, left-handed drive, and there would be trouble exporting it. Get rid of it for her, will you? Malcolm asked the mileage of the Citroën, the condition of the tyres, what further repairs it required. He made penciled calculations on the back of the menu and then said, Should be worth about 250,000 francs. Do you want it in cash or paid direct into her account? Cash, said Marylda quickly. The bank might be another possible danger. Cash is easier in shops that don't know you. They are sometimes difficult about checks. Rowan smiled fondly at her. He had already forgotten the incident of the spilled wine, and found it ingenious of her to imagine that his wife's checks could ever be questioned. Bride and bridegroom went back to the Ritz in a taxi. Duncan stayed to settle the bill. Lucky chap, Rowan, he mused. But she's not going to have an easy wicket unless she can cure his glooms and tackle Georgina. And who could? Malcolm, deciding that exercise was indicated before returning to the embassy, walked briskly along the quays. Brick's umbrella in hand, black Homburg meticulously adjusted. From a flower shop in the Faubourg Saint-Honoré he sent orchids to the lady to whom he now owed fealty. So, Honeymoon in Paris is chapter number 14, which I shall read soon.